Meeting women was a lot more challenging before the emergence of internet dating services. Because there had not been as much progress made in technology during those times, males all over the world had a more difficult time interacting effectively with women. When I was younger, it was far more difficult to meet a good woman. Equivalent to examples seen in the 21st century now. Because she had no other choices, she started dating the guys from the neighborhood or any random passerby who managed to win her affection. Because of this, more males were able to approach a woman and strike up a conversation because life was simpler in those days. Due to the fact that they were unable to communicate with one another, he had no idea if he would ever see her again. If he hadn't had the guts to put himself out there and meet potential partners, he never would have found the woman who would become his wife. I mean, that's absolutely out of your mind. According to the standards that are already in place, none of it is required of us. The emotional distance that exists in today's culture is greater than it has ever been, with men in particular being afraid to strike up talks with women. I believe that in this day and age, when people are more accessible than they have ever been, it is very necessary to have a conversation about what went wrong and what implications this may have for the future. When and how did men stop making sexual overtures toward female coworkers and customers? You ought to be aware of the fact that people, and men in particular, have a propensity to analyze all of the consequences of a decision before actually carrying it through. Please give some consideration to the points raised below. Bear this in mind at all times whenever you are engaging with males. One particularly striking illustration of this can be observed in the perspectives that men hold regarding marriage. The majority of men will give the decision to be married a great deal of thought, weighing the benefits and drawbacks as well as what they have to gain and lose from the relationship depending on whether or not it is effective. When beginning a conversation with a lady, it is essential to keep in mind the same thing throughout the exchange. Because women have made the procedure so dangerous and unpleasant, males no longer believe it to be worthwhile to go through with the operation. If a man is going to approach a woman when there's a possibility that she'll reject him, ridicule him, or brand him as a weirdo, then he had better be sure that the payoff is worth it in order to make the move. Women in today's society are taught that if they don't like someone, that person must be a sexual predator, a creep, or even a rapist or sexual assaulter if they don't like them. This is a harmful message for women to internalize. Men will have a harder time approaching women and starting conversations with them because of this change. To put it another way, there is no need for a man to make the first move toward initiating contact with a woman if this is the case. If a typical man were to approach a typical lady with the intention of striking up a conversation with her, the typical lady would make the typical man feel awkward. I've seen movies in which the male protagonist is trying to strike up a conversation with the female protagonist, but the female protagonist ends up embarrassing him by making him appear like an idiot. When I see something like this, it makes me question why a male in this day and age would feel the need to initiate conversation with a lady. The woman uploaded the video on the internet and depicted the encounter in an unfavorable light so that she would receive more attention. As I've been sitting here reflecting about the situation, I've had this thought come to me. If we want to make sense of this phenomenon, the first thing we need to do is recognize that women behave differently depending on the type of man they are with at any given time. At the conclusion of the day, a woman will evaluate a man and assign him a value based on his looks, demeanor, and interaction with her. This evaluation will take place based on the following factors. Keep in mind that a woman will treat a man differently depending on how she perceives him because of how she feels about him. A woman has the right to be cruel to a guy if she believes that the male is less capable than she is. It is necessary for us to give this considerable consideration. If a woman believes that another man is superior to her, she is more inclined to appreciate that man and to entertain the possibility of having a sexual relationship with him. Compare the conversation that the janitor had with his boss to the conversation that a female employee would have with her manager. It has been suggested that the objective is to demonstrate that modern women do not hold men in particularly high regard. I believe that the overwhelming majority of men are aware of this, and as a direct result, they have made the decision to steer clear of contemporary women. Because attractive women tend to view men who share their physical qualities more favorably than high-quality men, many men have made the decision to give up on dating altogether as a result of this phenomenon. Because men have realized that women's opinions of them can only get more negative over time, they are no longer deceived by the feminine charm that women possess. Men are finding out the hard way that approaching women is not a good idea, and that doing so frequently puts their safety and reputation in peril. This is something that they are learning by their mistakes. They are acquiring this knowledge by the application of it in actual situations. After having the police called on them for approaching a lady who didn't like them, men are starting to say things like "to hell with it" and "I'll be better off not approaching ladies." For reasons you may or may not be aware of, this is happening for reasons that you may or may not be aware of. In particular, males who were disapproved of by a female target have been reported to the authorities after approaching that target. Men are increasingly expressing their indifference in connecting with women by saying things like "to hell with it" and other phrases of a similar nature. The question then becomes, why would any rational person put in all of that effort for such a small payoff? If a woman gives off the feeling that she does not want to be contacted by anyone, especially by males, then the chances of a guy starting a discussion with her are lower. When a woman gives off the vibe that she is not interested in being approached, a man is less likely to go up to her and initiate conversation with her. This is a general rule. Therefore, men avoid approaching these women, and it's simple to understand why. Telling a woman she has to smile is considered as a sign of being sexist and a woman hater, and it's easy to see why men avoid approaching these women. It has led to a significant number of males isolating themselves within themselves and giving up hope of developing meaningful relationships with women. It is important that you consider it from this vantage point. Would you strike up a conversation with a man who gives off the impression of always being furious and who could explode into physical violence at any moment? The experiences that women have at work and at home might be very different from one another. If a woman gives off the impression that she does not want to speak to anyone, a guy who is attracted to a woman may be dissuaded from approaching her. This is the case even if the woman is attractive. It is likely that he will draw the conclusion that she is trying to avoid him because she does not wish to participate in the conversation. Even if it is essential to have an approachable demeanor, a welcoming smile, and good clothes, modern women don't give a hoot and aren't willing to change their behavior.